Trump signs strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology executive order. That is a freaking mouthful.
When I saw the document, I did a keyword search. Zero mention of Bitcoin. It was not us that said there's a Bitcoin stockpile or a Bitcoin strategic reserve. It was those that were proposing it. So naturally, when it doesn't end up that, you're going to have some people saying, hey, we got rug pulled. I know we have to be patient, and these are huge forward progressive gains. We got Ross freed, SAB 121 was rolled back, but at the end of the day, this is a fintech bill. Now we roll up our sleeves, go to work, letting legislators know that this is Bitcoin only for the US. This is the route to take. For the workers of America, we're focusing on Bitcoin. Hey everyone, welcome to the Rank and File Bitcoin podcast. This is Bitcoin for the worker and wage earner, where we put high signal over subs. We don't care about subs unless you're a Jersey Mike's calling us to sponsor the show. Then we will definitely care more about subs.
We'll gladly take subscribers. So if you want to subscribe, like, comment, and share with your friends and family, we'll gladly take that. Or Jersey Mike's as well. We'll take both calls.
But it has to be the Italian cold cut special because my guy's from Jersey.
Oh, definitely.
What is on the docket? Serious Bitcoin stuff for the worker wage earner. What is on the docket?
We got great news, everyone. Our boy, Ross Ulbricht, is freed. Full pardon from President Trump. I almost said President Biden there. President Trump, number 4547. Which was even better than his promise. So on the campaign trail, Trump spoke at the Libertarian National Convention as well as the Bitcoin conference. And basically he said that he was going to commute Ross's sentence as time served, basically, which would mean he was still guilty of his crimes, but, he would be out of jail based on time served. But a full pardon means that there is no criminal fault. Ross is getting clean slate after 11 years in federal prison in Arizona. Our boy, Ross Ulbricht's free. Dom, what are your thoughts? Our boy, he's out.
Dude, I was nervous. Day one became day two. I know we harped, the autists were harping on day one, but words mean things. Happy he came through. And honestly, with everything going on, I think everyone feels that everything was worth it. So I know there was a ton of people behind the scenes. Obviously, Ross's mom never gave up on Ross. And this is a huge, huge development for Bitcoin that I think people aren't even, realizing what the impacts are to the space.
Yeah, I know one of the spicy takes that I was saying, and Dom, you and I were talking offline, so Ross is fully pardoned, not commuted. So obviously when you're commuted, it's still like, hey, you did the crime, we get to keep your proceeds, as in the Bitcoin from Silk Road. At the time when they seized Silk Road, there was about 73,000 Bitcoin, almost 174,000 Bitcoin. And I know that over the past years, they've sold off a bunch in troves. I know Tim Draper has a bunch of Bitcoiners Bitcoin because he bought a bunch of them at a discounted price when they were doing a full auction. So right now they only have close to 70 to 80,000 Bitcoin left from the Silk Road. But since they pardoned Ross Ulbricht, does that mean that they owe him his Bitcoin back because he didn't do anything illegal? And that's our boy's Bitcoin. I'm just saying. What are your thoughts, Dom?
Yeah, we're going to have to somehow get like a call Joe Carlasari for a legal clarity plug-in for this show. But I would guess probably not. That being said, there was something in the executive order that Trump put out that said the stockpile could be assets that were legally seized by the United States. My question is, we know there was a lot of bad actors in Ross's case. A lot of people were convicted that were undercover agents. So is there any chance that those assets were illegally seized? That's a big question mark. And I just hope in unsealing the files that they're able to clear Ross's name and get us some more information on a lot of the shady type things that were done to take him down.
Yeah, and I guess I'll add more context to that. So as of right now, it doesn't seem the U.S. government has any Bitcoin. Yes, they hold their own keys, or at least they've confiscated the assets. They have about 200,000 Bitcoin. So as I mentioned, there was about 70 to 80K Bitcoin from Silk Road that obviously we're going to find out one way or the other, whether they give it back to Ross or whether they keep it as part of the strategic reserve. But one thing's for sure, the court just ruled 9 days ago, literally 9 days ago, there was a infamous Bitfinex hack in 2016, by the world's richest rapper, Razzle Khan. And her husband basically did a social engineering attack and were able to hack into Bitfinex based on just they had a bunch of hot wallets. Is long story short. And we can get into that later. But basically, they were able to social engineer Bitfinex and their engineering team and basically take custody of about 120,000 Bitcoin. So right now, the U.S. government has about 200,000 Bitcoin. If you assume 70, 80,000 is from Silk Road and the other 120 is from Bitfinex, the ruling just came out 9 days ago from a federal court saying that this needs to go back to Bitfinex, meaning that it's their Bitcoin. The U.S. government will give it back to them. They did not give a timetable of when that occur. And obviously, we're getting into later about Trump's executive order about creating a strategic stockpile. But, hey, the stockpile went from 200K Bitcoin to zero. Could be the case. And then if the U.S. wants to build a stockpile, they got to buy more. I think that's only bullish for Bitcoin because, one, it shows that the government's not going to seize your property and keep it for themselves, even though that might be the case in the future. And then, two, if they do give back the Bitcoin, but they want to create a strategic stockpile, more buying, Dom, and you know what that means? Bitcoin's only going higher. Laura, this only goes up.
Yeah, it's that's super. I didn't realize that aspect where some was coming out. So obviously, I think US is number one right now, and we want to maintain that spot. So getting some more Bitcoin by any means necessary. It looks like it's on the menu. I'll be curious to see if they're going to do something with Congress and actually purchase that and support Lummis's proposal on, a steady acquisition of Bitcoin. Maybe they go the mining route and they start trying to set up infrastructure for the aggressive mining of Bitcoin. But again, you can only mine so much Bitcoin in a day. You ain't going to get to 1 million Bitcoin through mining. So we'll see what happens.
Yeah. I got 5 spicy takes real quick off the rip, Dom, if you don't mind, from Lola Leitz about Ross's pardoning and then everything about it. So she said, 1, she wrote an article for murder for hire charges against Ross at Bitcoin Magazine. Let me be a reminder for these facts. 1, agents who investigated Ross, who posed as hitmen and faked Ross's colleague's death, were sentenced to years in prison for corruption, stealing, and trying to extort hundreds of thousands of dollars from Ross. 2, both agents had administrative access to the site. That's very important because that comes into it later. 3, according to the Department of Homeland Security, former site administrators and people with personal contact to Ross and DPR, DPR stands for Dread Pirate Roberts, which was the admin or moniker that was used that was running the Silk Road. DPR was more than one person. So DPR was more than one person. That's very important. 4, DPR or Dread Pirate Roberts logged onto his account while Ross was in prison. And then 5, all for murder for hire charges were dismissed with prejudice, meaning they could never be filed again. So I have said this for years. Dom and I have gone back many late nights at Bitcoin conferences and such saying, Ross, our boy, love him to death, but, he kind of was trying to hit people. That's what Dom was saying, not me. I said, no, our boy is innocent. He was framed by the FBI, which is probably the case, most likely the case. And then 2, Dread Pirates Roberts, people were on the account even after they had the FBI, quote unquote, seized Silk Road. And also he logged on while he was in prison. So I'm just saying my boy Ross was framed. They had to drop the charges because the prosecution didn't have a leg to stand on. Obviously, they were trying to get with him with money laundering, operating an illegal money services business, selling drugs. They tried to hit him with everything else. But I'm glad to see our boy Ross Ulbricht is pardoned fully. Dom, any final thoughts before we move on to the next story?
Yeah, I think a working person's definition of entrapment, and don't quote me on this, is, getting someone to commit a crime that they really weren't planning on or had an interest in committing in the first place, right? So entrapment in that sense. When you do look at everyone, a lot of people look in the news and some of the Ross haters go, hey, the guy ordered a hit on someone. This isn't a hero. We shouldn't be celebrating this person. That being said, for those of us that have read the transcripts, they really pushed or tried to push whoever was on those accounts by saying, hey, we're getting funds stolen. We have to do something. We have the person. He's right here. Should we pull the trigger or, finalize, like whack this guy and literally trying to by any means push someone on that account to say, okay, fine, do it. And so even with that, I just hope this stuff comes to light. And we also look, not to change topics, but the server, that's going to be a big one, how they got info from the server and different aspects. So I hope stuff gets unsealed. I think Trump had mentioned that he wanted to kind of expose some of the bad tactics and behaviors by the FBI. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, no, definitely. And I'll just add last points before we wrap this up, that a lot of things have already been said about Ross, obviously in the media. Obviously, there's a movie about it, the book, The American Kingpin. I know producer Jacob, our boy, I told him about
Great
the book.
book.
It's a very entertaining book, But even
Oh,
at the very
incredible.
end, you get to the end and it says Ross and his family were not contacted or they were reached out without comment about this book. So anything that is said about Ross, his mentality, what he was thinking, what happened, like you can kind of disregard all of that book. I know obviously they interviewed Chris Tarbell, the FBI investigator. They interviewed the IRS agent that helped with the accounting of figuring out where the Bitcoin funds were moving. And he was actually able to uncover, the IRS agent was able to uncover a lot of the corruption on the FBI side of things that they were basically extorting and money laundering. But that's, obviously they were jailed for all of that as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think we're going to get a lot more light into this in the coming years. And I definitely would love to do a deep dive on this in the future, Dom. But
Oh yeah.
we can move on to the next one. More staying in the privacy realm. This is a crypto thing. Don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying. But the district court officially ordered the reverse of sanctions against Tornado Cash. So, like I said, we're a Bitcoin podcast, Bitcoin and Bitcoin only. But this has sweeping, this ruling has sweeping issues or sweeping consequences to the Bitcoin industry.
Implications all day.
Implications. So
your boy's been reading. Your
I
boy's
have.
been reading, Alemo. Lots of books. Less shows, more books.
For sure. So Tornado Cash is a cryptocurrency mixer, or let me rewind this back. It is Tornado Cash is basically a contract-based mixer. So meaning that there is a non-custodial mixer. So normally when you think of a mixer is, hey, Dom, I'm going to send you money, or let's use cash. It's you, me, and Jacob. We each have a $1 bill. We each throw those dollar bills in a bowl. We mix them up and we pull out the dollar bills. Yes, we each have the equivalent of $1 still, but we don't know if the dollar that I took out was the one that you put in or the one that you that came out of there. So basically what that means is it's a way to make your transactions more anonymous, or increase the anonymity set. I'm going to butcher that word, so we're not going to go back to it. But so according to the filing in New Orleans-based U.S. Court of Appeals for the Fifth Circuit, the previous decision to place sanctions on the digital asset tumbler has been lifted. So obviously there's been three really important cases in the Bitcoin and crypto industry. One was the Bitcoin fog case, where they were going after Roman Sterlingoff for running a Bitcoin fog. He claims that he was a user and not running the site. And like Ross, the Bitcoin fog mixer is still running today, even though he has been in jail for just about 4 years now. So Roman Sterlingoff, that's the first name. Also Roman Storm was the developer that created Tornado Cash. Tornado Cash, once again, is a non-custodial contract for mixing Ethereum. But with that being said, he was currently imprisoned in 2022 under the Biden administration and Choke Point 2.0. And basically, he's claiming that, hey, I made this thing, but it's free and open source. I don't control it. And they were trying to go after him, saying he was running an unregistered money servicing business. He was money laundering. Criminals such as the Lazarus Group out of North Korea were using this and then hurting U.S. as well as Iran. But also ultimately they ruled that the ruling to go after Tornado Cash as an illegal tumbler has to be repealed. So obviously I think the prosecution is going to try and appeal the appeal. But as of right now, the sanctions are lifted, meaning that I hope Roman Storm, the one that created Tornado Cash, will be released. And then the last case is our friends and our boys in the industry, the Samurai Case guys. So the Samurai Case guys, similar kind of thing. We're running a non-custodial Bitcoin a Bitcoin coin join service. So basically similar kind of thing, the dollar analogy, putting dollar bills into a bowl, picking them out, and what you put in necessarily isn't what you pulled out. It's a way to increase your privacy when using Bitcoin. So Dom, I know I spit a lot out at you. Anything you want to comment there?
We know Alemo is always going to sneak in a privacy chew toy for the show. This is it right now. Hey, privacy is really important, especially to anyone in Bitcoin and our listeners. I think about Natalie Smolensky's talk at BPI Institute in DC, where, she talked about peer-to-peer transacting is not a negative thing. It's a very positive thing that is a key part of our society. Privacy matters, and it shouldn't be assumed that privacy is shady. A lot of the stuff getting rolled back by the prior administration, whether it be the executive order for responsible development of digital assets and cryptocurrency, a lot of that policy, it just assumed that if you're using privacy tools that you are a bad actor. It literally said that in the bill, which I always thought crazy. It's like this concept of like guilty until proven innocent. It's good to see things like this developing with Tornado Cash. Again, even if even if there are some other components outside of Bitcoin, because right? It's okay for people to want to be private and to exchange value with each other privately. It doesn't mean that they're committing a crime. And so I think that's great, and we love to see it in the space. And these are good developments happening right now.
Yeah. All right, now we're going to talk about SAB 121, Dom. So Paul Atkins is currently Trump's pick for the SEC. I know we should know very shortly, either today, today is Friday, January 24th. He might be confirmed. It looks like will be confirmed. He doesn't seem like a controversial pick like some of the other ones that Trump has. So I don't think there's going to be an issue with him getting in. So Paul Atkins said on day one he would reverse SAB 121, which is in conjunction with what Trump wants. So Dom, I know you and the listeners are saying, what is SAB 121? I've never heard of it.
What is that? It's like a car model, right? You drive a SAB 121.
I think that's a Saab, but
off the lot.
that's a Saab, but this is SAB. So SAB 121. So SAB 121 was a ruling that came out in the SEC under Gary Gensler during Biden's administration. Basically, if banks want to custody Bitcoin, they had to have one-to-one reserves of cash on hand. Basically meaning, how do banks work? Banks work by lending money and making money on the money that they lend out. So basically,
banks work by screwing over the working man.
That's true. Very true. So, but this was basically a death blow, because if banks wanted to hold Bitcoin and other crypto assets, if you wanted to hold $1 billion worth of Bitcoin, you have to have a $1 billion worth of cash. And that's not cash that can go into money market funds. It can't go into bonds. It literally has to stay in cash in the bank. So this is dead money. No bank was ever going to do this.
Not going to happen.
Yeah, like maybe if they're like, hey, we're going to be cute, Dom. We're going to have $100 of Bitcoin on our balance sheet. We're going to have $100 reserve note right there of our boy Benjamin Franklin, so that way we're fully reserved. But basically, this was basically a shot in the foot to the industry that banks were no longer going to have the ability to custody Bitcoin and other digital assets. There was a vote, so this went to Congress, and Biden thought that the Republicans were going to support this and the Democrats were not going to support this and kind of fall in line with what he wanted with SAB 121 with Biden and Gary Gensler. This is not what happened. Let me restate that. This is not what happened, because the Democrats that were, all over the United States, whether Congress or Senate, were like, their constituents are like, no, dude, like, it's not a partisan issue. It's bipartisan. Democrats and conservatives, liberals and Republicans, they all love the Bitcoin and other digital assets. So basically, when it went to a vote with Congress, they actually voted to repeal what Biden administration was doing with SAB 121. Ultimately, this went through the House and the Senate. They both had enough votes to go through. It went to Biden's desk to sign the executive order, and ultimately he vetoed it instead. And then, unfortunately, when it went back to the House, to Congress and Senate, it failed because they did not get a 2/3 majority in order to override it. But even Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, Mitch McConnell, Ted Cruz, Democrats and Republicans alike wanted this to get repealed, because they're like, hey, you're hindering banks, and people want to use banks in order to hold Bitcoin for them. So obviously,
I'll tell you what, I don't know if you've been to your local bank lately, Alamo, but it's looking more and more like a museum every day. I go there maybe once a year, for that weird, I don't know what you'd have to go in there for, that foreign currency or traveling, but I don't even use foreign currency anymore. So there's not a lot of reason to go into your banking center. And when you do go in there, you could just put a glass in and kind of walk by and go, hello, folks, like, here is a bank. It used to be used for getting paper cash. And so, yeah, these banks, they have to evolve or, take deeper dives into irrelevancy. And so I'm sure a lot of people looking on are like, you don't hinder us from doing that. With that said, I did tweet out the other day that now and only now can JP Morgan say accurately that Bitcoin is used for criminals, because the banks can now hold it. No, just kidding. Lots of great banking people out there. But super relevant development. And I know Saylor tweeted out about it, and a lot of people, this is a huge one of those pillars that moves an industry into digital assets. And if they're smart, they'll hold Bitcoin. And if not, they'll get burned with a bunch of the other trash out there.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, I think celebrities enjoy a lot of the benefits. Maybe they get in, that the celebrities come in, they welcome them with the open
You mean
arms.
like banks? A lot of celebs use banks
Yeah,
still.
so I wish we had
Okay.
like celebrity callers that could call in and be like, these are all the perks that I get at banks. JP Morgan Chase treats me really well. Jamie Dimon's a personal friend.
Chris,
Yeah.
I'm sorry to interrupt. We actually do have a caller.
Oh shit.
I think
We have
there's
call-in
someone that just
feature.
it is the internet, man. So we just had a guy claiming to be Christopher Walken call it in. Do you
All right.
you cool if I pipe him in or bring him in?
Oh, you definitely bring him in.
All right,
Yeah,
hold
I
on
can
one second.
send him in. Send him in.
Hey, rank and file Bitcoin. It's Christopher Walken here, and I'm hearing about this SAB 121. I kind of agree with Dom. I thought it was a car. I thought, maybe the Saab 121 new model. I don't trust these banks as far as I can throw them. They're going to try to get their greasy little fingers on my Bitcoin, and I'm telling you, I may have to put it in a place that they won't be able to get to, and you know where that spot is. So just be careful if the banks are holding Bitcoin. Who knows what they're going to try to do? They may try a hard fork or some along those lines. So keep the course. We got to stay with self custody, not your keys, not your damn coin. Come on. I'm out. Have a good show, gentlemen.
Thank you. Wow. Christopher
Whoa.
Walken in the flesh. That was wild. I
Dude.
loved him in Severance. Just finished season 1. Don't ruin anything for me, Dom. But great show. Great show. Wow. Great actor, too.
I kind of would have taken him for more of a like walk the corporate line kind of guy, but he has a lot of odd takes in the movies. So the fact that he is a little bit of an off the wall Bitcoiner, it could be if that was him, it doesn't surprise me, but
he
that's
doesn't
so
get the
awesome.
Jamie Dimon treatment. That's for sure, apparently.
No. They make him go on the branch for sure.
Yeah. So I guess continuing on, I mean, obviously Christopher Walken does not like SAB 121. So obviously he'll be very happy with it being repealed under Trump's administration. But I'm going to caution the audience, Dom, you and the audience alike, that, this may pump our bags, but with that being said, banks and the credit cards, they're all intermingled. I just worry that they're going to give you extremely enticing. They're going to make you offers you can't refuse to lend your Bitcoin to banks, and I will heed my warnings to them. These are the same people that caused the 2008 great financial crisis. These are the same people that took advantage of the 2020 COVID opportunity. So I just want to say they're going to give you enticing yields for your Bitcoin. They're going to give you nice loans if you want to borrow against your Bitcoin. And I just heed your warning. We saw BlockFi, Voyager, Celsius, hedge funds such as 3 Hours Capital, and exchange such as FTX all collapse in 2022. So I just want to know, banks love leverage and they love lending. And at the end of the day, in the wise words of American Hodl, shitcoiners love Bitcoin too. They just love your Bitcoin. And banks are shitcoiners. They're the OG shitcoiners. They use the fiat dollar, the US dollar, which is the OG shitcoin.
Yeah, we know this system loves proof of stake, and they love to rehypothecate and create value that doesn't exist and leverage long and all that. So again, for those listening and your everyday worker that's going to the construction site or going to the firehouse, we have such an amazing gift, and it's buy Bitcoin and hold it in self custody and sit tight and hold on to the greatest digital scarcity that's ever existed. It's tempting. I know people want to tap funds and kind of, maybe upgrade their life. So definitely use caution. Remember, when you are not in custody of your Bitcoin, things can happen, and that will never change. There's always going to be a thin line between self-custody and other custodians, and they will try to walk that line as close as possible. But somewhere on that line is always the black and white difference between having your own keys and custody of your Bitcoin and someone else having access. So, like I always say, self-custody is a journey, not a destination. Stay on it, stay learning. And before you hand over your Bitcoin to the same banks that, were responsible for tons of value being taken from worker pensions and worker portfolios and retirements, just use some caution and make sure you know what's going on.
Yeah, definitely. Not your keys, not your coins. And I think I will say, with it being repealed, I do think it'll be great for competition. A lot of loans in the industry are anywhere from like 13 to 17% if you want to like lend your Bitcoin and they give you a loan against it, and you have to be over collateralized. So I do think it'll bring the loan percentages down, and it'll bring the collateralization down as well. Maybe more risky for the banks, definitely more risky. But then, two, also, if you are borrowing against your Bitcoin, or if you're lending it, they'll give you better rates. And if you're borrowing against it, they'll give you better rates. But with I said like that, like we said, word of warning, I don't think I'll use these products, at least not in the near term. Maybe in 10, 20 years, it's a different story. But at the end of the day, not your keys, not your coins. And Bitcoin, with how volatile it is, you'd hate to get liquidated and lose the hard-earned Bitcoin that you've been stacking all this time, just to get another 6, 7, 8% yield, whatever they offer you. It's probably not worth it. That's just my opinion.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see how quick or slow they jump into this space. And I think, look, we joke around, but as Diamond has been, at public hearings saying Bitcoin's for criminals, the big question is, have banks been doing things on the back end to get positioned to hit the ground running on Bitcoin and digital assets? Or is there going to be some time delay? I think we're going to see. If you see them coming out fast, they were full of BS the whole time and that they had plans for this and they were ready. So, yeah, let's see. Next time you walk into B of A, you might see a big Bitcoin logo with a little desk there with someone sitting there ready to get your Bitcoin and do some lending. And you just
Hodl
walk
Magoo
in.
right there at the desk, like just
yeah, right over here at the desk. We have a triple reverse quadruple axle mortgage 3-to-1 lending arm option for your Bitcoin right here. So just go drop off that dirty fiat and then be gone. And yeah.
All right. Proof of workforce ad. Dom, you want to take it away?
Yeah. So Proof of Workforce, right? Sponsoring this show. It is a educational based nonprofit that works on initiatives for labor unions, pensions, municipalities, also working at the state level with folks. The focus is always on education first, grassroots adoption. And so whether you're a worker or wage earner, or you're part of a union, or your pension, or you have a pension or retirement set up as a worker, wage earner, or your city or state, we have a tremendous amount of resources that are available to you at zero cost. Alemo, the cost, zero. So we try really hard to raise funds so that we can offer zero cost initiatives. We have 7 unions to date that hold Bitcoin on the balance sheet. All have learned self-custody, and we're on 2 continents now. And so the calls are coming in. We're here to provide good education. So if you want to bring Bitcoin to your city, your union, or your pension, we are here to help with resources and make you successful.
Dom, tell me about Senate Bill 34, Kansas State bill.
Yeah, so this is a new bill. It's regarding the Kansas Public Employees Retirement System, which is a pretty large pension system out of Kansas, $27.3 billion. They are sitting at a funded ratio of 74%. For the listeners at home, what's that mean, the funded ratio? It means that the pension has 74% of the assets they currently need in their portfolio for required payments that they have to make. The industry standard for a healthy pension is 80%, but 74%, if it's marked accurate, is not terrible. So really interesting bill that came out of, I think the senator's name is Bowser's, which is cool because when I read it, I was like, man, that's Bowser's. That's a cool name there. And the proposal is to allow the Kansas pension system, the state pension system, to allocate up to 10% of their portfolio to Bitcoin. So not sure who did the work there, the proof of work, but great work. It'll be interesting, Chris, because pension investment boards typically don't like state legislator telling them how to invest. As you can imagine, if me and you are on investment board, right, we're calling the shots. And so being forced into that can be tough, but maybe they're on board already. Maybe they're just looking for support. So keeping the optimism for this fund, and just hope that they involve education and good stakeholder education if they do take a step like this. I think it could be great. And in this new financial environment, we know that Bitcoin is built to run.
Yeah.
And it will run in the long term, and it will in the next 10 years positively impact a state pension system and the recipients of that system. So healthy workforce, healthy state, and tons of potential there.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll utilize the whole 10% that they're being allocated, or if this goes through. I think they'll dip their toes in, maybe 0.1%, maybe 0.5%, maybe a whole percentage point. Although our boy Larry Fink, our boy, not really our boy, he's our banker boy, but he was saying that
like Max Kaiser says, he's a Bitcoin employee of the month.
Yeah, exactly. He was saying that he was allocating anywhere from 2 to 4% is what they'd recommend. I think BlackRock for Bitcoin, or at least I forget. I know that there was a lot of stuff coming out of Davos, but I think it was 2 to 4%, which is much higher than, when the ETFs were launched last January. They were saying like 0.5% to 1%. Now he's already bumped it up to 2 to 4%. So obviously, the Bitcoin ETFs have been the most successful ETFs of all time. At one point, the ETFs were taking in more funds, or at least even BlackRock's ETF was taking in the third most funds in the world. More than QQQ, more than SPY. It was only below like a bond fund that like everyone in the world uses, and it was like the Vanguard. I think it was Vanguard, Vanguard S&P 500 fund. So basically, it was the third most. The Bitcoin ETF was the third most last year, which is insane when you think about it. It's only been out for just over a year at this point.
Yeah, two things come to mind. One, to roll back a pinch, just so people know, that Kansas bill is in its like intro draft mode, so it's not finalized by any means. It's been introduced, so it still has to go through the House and the Senate, I believe, there in Kansas. But number two, you mentioned Davos. What a 180 from Davos. I mean, last year we had Davos of Jamie Dimon having a nervous breakdown. He was tired of being asked about Bitcoin. I'm tired of, I support your right to Bitcoin. I don't know if he compared it to smoking marijuana or something like that. Now here we are at Davos, and Fink is just sending it. And you have BJ Armstrong out there. And what a 180 for Davos. I mean, gosh, it's just, anyone watching that. And for those that don't know, Davos is like a super, I guess, what'd you call it? Like a ritzy elitist
conference.
Me and Alemo tried to get in as concession stand. The little thing that goes around your neck with the cigarettes and the candy and stuff like that. But they shot us down. We were going to, sell some of the candy and smokes out there, but we couldn't get in.
You have to be a politician, high-ranking politician, or a CEO of a Fortune 500 company. Like that's the only way. Or
I think Simply Bitcoin got an invite there, so Simply gets in, but very, very hard to get into that.
Yes, exactly.
Don't quote me on that. I don't know if that's accurate.
So last thing, Trump signs a strengthening American leadership in digital financial technology executive order. That is a freaking mouthful. So kind of rug pulled a little bit of the Bitcoin industry. That's just me personally. But here are the points from Eleanor Tourette from Fox Business. So one, the executive order establishes the President Working Group on Digital Asset Markets to strengthen U.S. leadership in digital finance. The working group will be tasked with developing a federal regulatory framework governing digital assets, including stablecoins, and evaluating the creation of a strategic national digital asset stockpile. So not like the Bitcoin digital asset stockpile or the Bitcoin digital reserve that everyone was talking about. The working group will be chaired by White House AI and crypto czar David Sachs, including the Secretary of the Treasury and other chairman and the chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission as heads of other relevant departments and agencies. The U.S. White House AI and crypto czar will engage leading experts in digital assets and digital markets. The executive order directs departments and agencies with identifying and making recommendations to the working group. The executive order prohibits agencies from undertaking any action to establish, issue, or promote a central bank digital currency or CBDC. And the executive order revokes the previous administration's digital assets executive order and the Treasury Department's framework for international engagement on digital assets, which suppressed innovation and undermined the U.S. economic liberty and global leadership in digital finance. That was a whole bunch of gobbledygook, Dom. What do you want to touch on there?
Yeah, so look, this is a good point here. This is the rundown from Fox. I encourage listeners, go read a source document today. Go onto the White House website and look at the actual executive order in its original language. There's going to be tons of takes and people have different twists. So that's number one. Number two, this bill has a lot of regulatory and fintech talk. It doesn't have a lot of Bitcoin stockpile talk. In fact, when I saw the document, I did a keyword search for Bitcoin. Zero mention of Bitcoin. Now, I understand we need to have patience as Bitcoiners, but one thing I really want to bring up is, okay, Bitcoiners are upset and saying, hey, it was not us that said there's a Bitcoin stockpile or a Bitcoin strategic reserve. It was those that were proposing it, right? And so naturally, when it doesn't end up that, you're going to have some people saying, hey, we got rug pulled. Again, I know we have to be patient, and these are huge forward progressive gains. No one can deny that. We got Ross freed. SAB 121 was rolled back. You have strong language mentioning CBDCs as an unfavorable kind of path for the U.S. But again, you also had people that were out there touting Bitcoin strategic reserve. Like day one, it's subtle, but words matter. And so Bitcoiners are always going to hold politicians accountable to their word. Like American Hodl said, I don't think that's a bad thing. It's good to have that accountability. With that said, we try to find some of the positives, but at the end of the day, this is a fintech bill. And you can see the influence from the crypto digital asset lobby on this. It is very transparent through the source document. So we have a lot of work to do. It doesn't mean that we go, we cry and say, oh, we didn't get the Bitcoin strategic reserve. It's still on the table. It means now we roll up our sleeves, go to work. That's one area where I think David Bailey, has a point, is like, hey, we got to continue pounding the pavement. So I know proof of workforce. I'll definitely be out in DC letting legislators know that this is Bitcoin only for the U.S. This is the route to take, and focusing on Bitcoin and letting them know that, hey, for the workers of America, we're focusing on Bitcoin.
Yeah, definitely. I'll add two caveats too. So obviously there are senators that understand it. Senator Cynthia Lummis, she was just nominated to head up the chair of the digital assets subcommittee. So she will be involved with this. I think she definitely has more of a Bitcoin only focus. I'm sure she has said in her bills with Senator Kristen Gillibrand of New York, a Democrat, so Republican and Democrat, coming together bipartisanly, trying to shape U.S. policy that's good for the everyday person and the everyday American and worker. But so I definitely think they're going to try to advocate for this. Obviously, they talked about they will look into stable coins. I think it is awesome that they said that the U.S., the federal government and agencies alike are not allowed to promote a central bank digital currency. I'll caveat from my good friend Mark Goodwin and Whitney Webb. They've been pounding the pavement for the last 2 to 3 years that, just because it's not a central bank digital currency from the Federal Reserve or the Treasury out of the U.S., doesn't mean that stable coins or other cryptocurrencies could be used in the private sector as CBDCs. Like, hey, we've seen 100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Sorry to interrupt. This is what we've talked about, that CBDCs are unlikely because, look, the Fed is limited in what it can do to offer incentives for a CBDC other than just like use this and we'll handle it. So it's not a coincidence, or if you believe in coincidence, it is, that SAB 121 is now rolled back. CBDCs are put to bed, and the door is wide open for banks to come in and potentially collaborate on a stable coin type. This is the dollar, the digital dollar of America. We're going to back it with all this stuff. So just be aware that, there's a lot of power concentrated at the banking level and their ability to surveil your transactions. It goes back to where we started on the show when we were talking about the mixers, right? We have a right to privacy. If I want to buy your pickup truck and exchange value for that, we're not doing anything wrong. we're just being, regular American folks, and we can do that without having to broadcast, oh, I bought Chris's pickup truck. Maybe you have an emotional attachment to that pickup truck. Maybe you went around and told your friends, I love my pickup truck so much that it's an extension of who I am. I would never sell it. You're embarrassed because now they're going to make fun of you that you sold your pickup truck. And Chris, we got in a fight 2 years ago. We got in a fist fight because I insulted your pickup truck. Who knows? But it doesn't mean that we're doing some kind of illegal activity. So yeah, that's really interesting on the CBDC. And I think we always thought that might come from the private sector.
Yeah. And I'll caveat that. So Tether has been the longest. They're the most profitable company in the world based on the number of employees they have. Made billions, and they've got like 50, maybe 100 people max. Even more than our boy Larry Fink over there in BlackRock. Like they made billions based on making Tether. Basically, people give them cash. They park them into U.S. Treasuries. They get a yield on the Treasuries, and they give you a Tether stablecoin that you can zap around, and all that. But with that being said, they've been operating since I think 2013 or 2014. The one thing I'll caveat is like they have not been taken out so far. And by that, I mean like the US government hasn't stopped them. But with that being said, they did onboard. They were bragging about onboarding the FBI and the IRS onto Tether a year and a half ago, 2 years ago at this point. So like I said, there's nothing to stop a private company from saying, hey, we've got, a stable coin or a digital dollar and you're using it, but then you're still being surveilled on the back end by the FBI and the IRS. So that's the one thing I'll caveat. There's also USDC, which is which is backed by Goldman Sachs. Although I've heard of zero people, literally zero, Dom. That's the number of today. Zero people that actually have ever used it. Like I know it's been talked about, but it seems that the world uses Tether on various crypto blockchains, not really so much on Bitcoin, unfortunately, and or USDC, but I've never heard of anyone using it. But like you said, other banks might be coming into the fold with the reversal of SAB 121. Two quick more points before we wrap up today. So Caitlin Long said, this is big. Trump's crypto executive order excludes the Fed and the FDIC from digital asset working groups. Both groups tried to kill the industry through debanking and especially targeting my company, Custodia Bank. Both belong on the outside. Nature is healing. Obviously, Caitlin Long was trying to create a fully reserve bank in Custodia Bank. She wanted to get Fed master account. The Fed denied her. She tried to sue them, saying that they were playing favorites. We obviously saw 2.5 years ago at this point, over the summer of 2023, that basically they killed Signature Bank, First National Bank, or not First National, Silicon Valley Bank, Signature Bank, and Silvergate Bank. Signature Bank was solvent, but they said on the weekend, on a Sunday, they said, no, you're closing. Like that was the Biden administration basically overruling. And even though their CEO was like, no, we're solvent, we can meet all demands. And they said, no, you have to close down. Monday, you'll be closing. And obviously their assets were sold to JP Morgan Chase. I think it's a way of stealing a good banking business and giving it to the top dogs or the ones, the big, too big to fail banks. But that's just my 2 cents. Anything you want to add to this, Dom, and then we hit Joe Carlosari, our boy over there.
Yeah. No, another thematic in our show is Bitcoin only. It's funny seeing separate from Caitlin's comments. So that's great that there's going to be, less attacks, but you have the funny meme where Gary Gensler is like, hey, I was trying to protect you guys the whole time, right? You have meme coins coming out from the president and all this other stuff. Again, those attacks, I'm sure in their mind, there was a lot of impetus behind the attacks to try to prevent scam projects from reaching American people. That's just because the floodgates are open. We still have that task more than ever. We have to educate folks on some of the dangers of all these millions of other coins. They have to learn Bitcoin first. Any listener, don't tell me and Alemo about your next favorite project when you haven't studied the protocol of Bitcoin, the network, how self-custody works, how nodes work, mining, etc. Do not pass go. Learn that first, because there's a very good chance once you learn that you're not going to be able to be scammed by other projects claiming to be whatever they claim to be. So a common theme, this is a good thing, but it also means that without the wolves, chasing down crypto projects, that projects are going to be able to run free in the system. We don't want to see a massive collapse like FTX, where Bitcoin is then blamed for the perils of all these bad actors. So it is on us to be big kids and educate folks, and we're going to have to quadruple our efforts on that.
So, yeah, definitely. And our boy, Joe Carlasari, a lawyer. Dom and I, not lawyers. Joe Carlasari, lawyer. So,
and board member of Proof of Workforce.
Board member, Proof of Workforce. While this is not legal advice, this is kind of what Joe was saying after reading the crypto executive order. He says the crypto executive order does not, 1, ban CBDCs, 2, protect self-custody or mining, 3, provide regulatory clarity, or 4, provide for a crypto stockpile. The executive order forms a working group to study these things, but does not impose legally binding rules. It only instructs federal agencies to review and recommend actions. This means existing statutes remain unchanged, and agencies must follow standard rulemaking processes before implementing new regulations. While it outlines the administration's policy goals, the order is best viewed as an aspirational roadmap. So that was straight from Joe Carlasari's tweet, his words. And then obviously there's a bunch of people going back and forth with it, but obviously it outlines their roadmap. And he was kind of saying there needs to be an act of Congress in order to do anything changing rules and regulations and laws. And then Trump would have to sign them into the Constitution or into law, or he could veto them. If he vetoes it, goes back to the House and the Senate, and then they would have to do 2/3 majority to overrule him. If not, it is killed, and they'd have to go back to the drawing board. But that's just the general legal framework. So, Dom, anything before we wrap up here?
Yeah, a lot of people remember the word leader's intent, and the executive orders. They give a lot of direction, but there's still three checks of government in our system, and so the executive orders are more leader's intent. Like, here is my leader's intent, and here's what I'm looking for. And yes, there is some authority within the executive branch to make these happen, but there's a lot of moving pieces. So again, don't trust, verify, continue to find good source documents, see what they say, read through the hype. I think we have, the door is still open if the U.S. wants to do a Bitcoin strategic reserve, but this executive order did not establish a clear Bitcoin strategic reserve. So, don't trade. Don't base your decisions on hype or what may or may not happen. There's a lot of moving pieces. Continue to educate yourself, stack sats, stay humble. You know the drill.
Definitely. All right. Thanks, guys. Thank you for listening to episode 1.
Episode 1, and we got a celeb caller, which may or may not have been Chris Walken. I'm just huge shout out to him. Huge fan of his movies. I can't believe he called in. It's incredible. Gratitude.
Definitely. Always grateful. That's a wrap, guys.